Hello, viewers. I'm Vibhuti Jha. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA and Jaipur Dialogue. And today I'm talking to you about an ongoing event in the United States, which is called the NATO Summit. We all know that NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is following recently concluded the G7 meet in Italy. So all the top leaders of the world, when we call top leaders, because these organizations are made to sound as if all those people who are in it are the topmost. This is the creation of a perception which is very critical for us to understand, who are neither part of NATO nor part of G7. So remember, I have always told you this, that the Western countries are very, very good in creating an institutional framework to push their agenda. You know, as the saying goes, I'm beating you up because you deserve to be beat up for your good. Remember that? This is what is important to understand. So before I start off, let me request you to please like, subscribe, and support both our channels, the India channel Jaipur Dialogue and the US chapter Jaipur Dialogue USA. Give your feedback as well. Support us any which way you can. Now, coming back to the issue. So right now, United States is hosting NATO. Now, remember one thing, it's very important. North Atlantic Treaty Organization is the only military organization in the world that is installed in Europe, because Europe frequently has its own share of territorial adjustments, the psychological and pathological desire to readjust their territories. They fight a lot. So Europe has significant issue with infighting within their own in their own continent. The First World War, the Second World War were not world wars. They were European territorial wars, which resulted in the colonies' armies dying in their land and creating a scenario as if it was a world war. So Europe has always become center to the world's problems and a solution to world problems. Think about it. Very, very tricky. Very smart too. What do we learn from there? So after the Second World War, they created CENTO and NATO. CENTO was Russia dominated. NATO was Western European dominated, where America joined as a winner of the Second World War, as a pivotal role played by America in the Second World War. So now it's a Three Musketeers word. Attack on one is war on everybody. As the Three Musketeers say, one for all for one. This is what the chapter Article 5 says of NATO. If any member is attacked, all members are attacked. Think about it. Three Musketeers, all for one for all, is a clause 5 of NATO, that any member is attacked, we will all fight. Think. Now, this is the only military organization in the world, and they hold the levers of control through United Nations, in the United Nations Security Council. Other than China, everybody is a European country who has that veto power. America and China being non-Europeans, but England, France, and Russia are Europeans. Now you are looking at Ukraine. In this NATO summit, President Biden made statements of providing sophisticated air missile system to thwart or destroy Russian attacks that happen. The war is a dirty scenario going on. It can't be uglier and sadder than what it is. I personally feel sorry for the people of Ukraine who are caught in the battle of words and the deception of leaders towards their country. Ukraine is being used as the disputed land between Russia and NATO and its membership of NATO. So this is what is happening. And Ukraine has now been termed as if the global food bowl for the rest of the world, and rest of the world must worry about it. The rest of the world is no longer buying that Ukraine is other countries' problem. It is European problem, and Europe must deal with it. NATO must not superimpose its will on everybody else. So now we know. In America, we know. I hope you know in other parts of the world that the American senators and congressmen have openly said that when we sanction significant budgets to Ukraine for weapons, the money doesn't go to Ukraine. It goes to American armament manufacturers directly here. So you can see it's a budgetary accounting adjustment. Somebody makes money for selling deadly weapons. And the funny part is that the five air defense systems that are being provided to Ukraine, they are very expensive for the very low cost attack that Russia does on them. This has thrown up another conversation to the rest of the world. This is the way the NATO is using its NATO organization G7 as a new tool of imperialism and colonialism. We decide what's good for the world. And that's what is important for people to understand, that Prime Minister Modi is not buying it. He has assiduously refused to support the Ukrainian war, other than telling that war is not good for not a solution for the global conflict. And he is willing to support provided every other country is part of it. But America doesn't want the war to end. They want Ukraine to win and defeat Russia with the help of NATO and other organizations, supplying them weapons, not realizing that so many Ukrainians are dying. Now let's juxtapose it here to Israel. United States is forcing Israel to spare the civilians in the war that is happening with Hamas, the tragic, unforeseen event that happened on October 7th last year. Brutality, the shameless ugliness of all that we know now and seen it on video. United States is surprisingly telling Israel not to prevent civilian damage, not in a position, and they are not asking Hamas not to use civilians as their shield. So you are this is where the democracy gets into challenge. You are playing the game with one hand tied at your back. Now what I'm saying is that why I'm calling it, there's a new European imperial tool of new imperial European activity, NATO, G7. Because this is how they want to control and manage the affairs of the rest of the world, by telling you who you are. And remember, because the Western media is so powerful that they can spin any narrative on you and I very easily. So I will name that gentleman. There is a gentleman called Derek Grossman. I think he's from Rand Corporation. If you see his recent tweets, it's all attack on Modi. Oh, Modi should not embrace, Putin. Putin is a mass murderer. Now, these are all allegations, insinuations that Modi's visit to Russia is a visit to a terrorist nation. Whereas Canada and United States and Europe are home to terrorist people who are wanting to damage India. See the gameplay? So this duplicitous nature, जो हिंदी में हम कहते हैं दोगलापन of the words, is terribly sad. That gentleman, Derek Grossman, is unfortunately making snide remarks on Modi to damage his reputation or his standing in the world. He also made a statement, oh, he is doing all of it to win Nobel Peace Prize. And I have an opinion on that. Many Indians have said, Modi, whatever he is doing, is trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And I said, he doesn't need Nobel Peace Prize. He's already the highest ranked leader in the world. Every world leader wants to be like him. And he doesn't want to join the ranks of Nobel Peace Prize winners who did nothing for peace. Do I need to name them? Do you think, and just one name, do you think Modi wants to be in the company of Malala? Just one name. And you can see how Nobel Peace Prize is a political tool to favor something. Like Mr. Barack Obama. He was given Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing, just talking about it. Right? Whereas that man, during his presidency, bombed so many countries, so many things. So issue is very important here. If the rest of the world needs to be aware of that. And thanks to technology, we know a lot more. Western European nations are in trouble. Ukraine is one such example I talked to you about. Territorial adjustments. Remember, Yugoslavia disappeared and five different countries came about. Czechoslovakia broke into two. Do we remember those names? No. But countries were created based on certain considerations that are very shockingly sad. Likewise, USSR collapsed. Many countries were created. This is what Europe does. And then, like German unification, Italy unification of Bismarck and Italian leaders, that's where again something will happen. Russia wants to reclaim its territories. Anytime you lose a territory, you want to reclaim. That's why India talks about Akhand Bharat. Whether politically it is a wise decision or not is immaterial. This is what I say. The control and manage is the narrative which institutional framework goes on. I have a suggestion, probably totally unheard of, very bizarre, but my thought is if Chinese leaders were smart, they will know that India has no territorial ambitions to destroy China. I'm convinced about it. In my mind, based on historical evidence, I know that India has no desire to capture Chinese territory other than get back its own which China occupies and has stolen, including what Nehru gave away the Aksai Chin area because no blade of grass grows there, right? This is what is important for us to know. If China were to come to terms with that, instead of fearing India, that India is the only country that can usurp, can become bigger than China because it has a democratic policies or democratic polity. China fears India. वो कहते हैं that say you can't keep two guns in the same holster, or as they say in Hindi, एक man में दो तलवारें नहीं रह सकती. That's what is important. That's what China fears most. But if China were smart and knowing full well that China and India are sufferers of European imperialism and colonialism, just as every other country in Asia has feared. So if China were smart, China would put a Pacific Treaty Organization with identical clauses like NATO in Asia and have lead that organization as India and China as a military organization. Not like this Shanghai Corporation or ASEAN and others, but a military organization. You do that, and then USA will be worried about attacking Taiwan or doing anything. If every country has to rise up to that moment, this is critically important for the rest of the world to know. Imagine, the Western nations are angry with India and Modi for supporting Russia. But as Prime Minister said in Russia, that the India-Russia petroleum deal benefited Europe most. And Germany was still buying the gas from Russia. So this kind of a doglapan is coming to haunt Europe now. What is happening in Europe, the less said the better. But in Prime Minister's trip, there was one thing which was remarkably wonderful to happen. On his return trip in Austria, he was given a rousing welcome, the first Prime Minister to go to Austria in 41 years. And in Austria, they played, the entire harmonica played Vande Mataram. I've heard that. If you haven't heard it, look it up. It's so remarkably wonderful. So what I want to say to you here is that while we may have internal elements who don't want to say Vande Mataram, but the world is recognizing with respect and acceptance. These are the two of my favorite words for everything. If you do not respect me, don't expect respect for you. It is a question of reciprocity. And Asian and Pacific nations need to understand that Asia remains a big market, big area. Europeans were ruling it once, the French in Vietnam and everywhere else. You know the story. I don't need to tell you all of that. How Asia was under dominance of Europe as a colonial and imperial power. They want to do that again. And I think today the world's problem is that every single trouble spot in the world is the consequence of European imperialism and colonialism. Now that Europe is seeing colonies return to them and capture their land in their way, do they need our sympathy? I don't know. Do they need our sympathy for fight for democracy? Well, they are the ones who are imposing democracy everywhere. They need to worry about it. Why must the rest of the world worry about what is happening on the European mainland? Is the problem of European mainland? Yes, we need to worry about it for one simple reason, that doesn't spill over in our land. With these words, I want to end this conversation. Satyameva Jayate, truth must triumph, and for truth to triumph, you and I have to stand up and stand for it. Thank you.